Hey Phil, this is Cameron.
Hey, what's up, Cam?
Man, I gotta talk to you about something. Have you been watching the news?
Dude, what is going on? What's up, everybody? I'm Phil.
And I'm Cameron.
Two Navy vets, just here to talk politics.
We're here with some differing views, but we're here to have a civil and a healthy discussion.
Thanks for tuning in to Pocket Politics. Welcome back, everybody. This is the 9th episode. Are we having a celebration next week for number 10? Is that a thing, Cam?
I guess it could be. I hadn't really thought about it, but it could be a celebration, I guess.
Yeah, and we're back on Saturdays, which is good. It's going to be back in our normal routine, recording on Saturdays. If you don't know, we've shifted to a Wednesday and a couple of Sundays because of my travel. But we are back at our regular time recording, so.
Well, a lot definitely in the news yet again this week, and we had primaries this past week, couple big ones, namely starting off with the one that has been all over the news, Phil, and that is the Wyoming primary with all eyes cast upon Liz Cheney.
Yeah, I think the interesting part about this primary is I think the election itself, like the primary election, is not as big of news as just Liz Cheney in general.
Well, I don't think it was big news because we all
knew she was going to tank.
Everybody knew she was going to tank. So,
and what are the demographics in that state? It's like hugely Trump Republican, right?
Yeah, very much so. So Wyoming is the least populated state in the union, and they have approximately 285,000 registered voters in the state. I mean, that's not very big at all, right? And of those 285,000, approximately 208,000 are Republicans, registered Republicans, and then the other 40,000 are Democrats.
Yeah,
or 40,000 are registered as Democrats. So that's not a lot of people.
Just to be clear, we were talking about Kansas previously, 2 episodes ago, and I mentioned that, my hometown and my home city in Kansas is like 350 to 400,000 people. That is larger than the amount of registered voters in an entire state. I mean, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, so if for our listeners, if you've never been to Wyoming, and I've been there. Phil, have you been to Wyoming?
I have been to Wyoming,
yeah. So the population of Wyoming really kind of centers around two areas, and that's Casper, Wyoming, in the center of the state, and then Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is in the far southeastern corner, Cheyenne being the capital.
Well, and Yellowstone, right?
Well, yeah, but Yellowstone is up in the northwest corner. But
I'm just joking, just because there's a TV show.
Well, yeah, but I was going to say Yellowstone's there, but there's nobody up there. I mean, the nearest thing to Yellowstone, I guess, would be Jackson, but those are kind of smaller resort
Kevin
places.
Costner,
Yeah, so, but going back to kind of the way it is, right? The population bases are kind of around Casper and Cheyenne, and each of those towns are 55,000 people. There's a couple suburbs around there. I've actually got some relatives that live in Casper. So other than that, though, other than Casper and Cheyenne, I mean, there's Laramie and Riverton, but these are 10, 15,000 person towns. So bottom line, there's just not a lot of people. There's a lot of open, spread out country. Wyoming is a very western state. Western as far as the feel and the culture and everything.
They have a guy on a horse with a lasso on their license plate.
Yeah, well, that's on their state crest or whatever. So it is a great outdoorsman state, right? Great place. I've done some fishing there and stuff. It's a great place for that. But Trump won almost 70% of the vote in Wyoming in 2020. I mean, he just dominated. The state is a very Republican-friendly state. I mean, it is dominated by Republicans left and right. So the primary itself this past week, it wasn't really any surprise. I think someone said it best. They said the person who would be most shocked in America if she won the primary would be Liz Cheney. They're like, she would be stunned herself because she knows politics and she knew she was done.
She knew all the way back to the debates. I mean, you could see it in the debate. But again, the bigger news about this is what's next for Liz Cheney. I mean, she was on the Today Show. Samantha Guthrie tried to pin her down on a presidential run. She kind of skirted it, just like all the candidates do. However, don't we all know she's doing it? I mean, she basically has said that her future intentions revolve 100% around not allowing Trump to be the president.
Well, I think that's definitely it. Right. I mean, if anybody watched the speech that she saw, did you see her speech she gave after she was defeated that night? It was in Jackson. By the way, beautiful setting for a speech. I mean, it looked like a movie board or something behind her, but it was up there in the Jackson, Wyoming area, and I mean, it was all about, talking about, I guess you'd say, the future, or kind of little hints at, I guess, running for president. I mean, she made comments in there about Lincoln. She talked about Lincoln getting defeated running for various offices, and but until he won the big prize, and that alone just kind of hinted. I mean, you almost saw a twinkle in her eye when she talked about that big prize, right, being the White House. No, I think Liz Cheney is got her eyes set on the president, or at least throwing her name out there to run. The question, though, becomes, how does she go about this? In other words, which direction does Liz Cheney go with this?
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think we've talked about it, and I've asked the question, does she run as an independent? Does she run as a Republican? I think if she runs as a Republican, she's not stopping President Trump if he decides to run in 2024. Now, whether or not he's actually going to run, I don't think he is, but does she run as a Republican? Does she run as an independent? Does she, run as just somebody in there to spoil the party? Who knows? But well, I will say that, before we get too much more into that, Hageman, the person who beat her, is a ultra MAGA Republican endorsed by the former president. Shows his he showed his power in this one, basically, by endorsing her. But it's like the lies never stop, right? She came out and said that Liz Cheney never conceded, and so then like a day later, Liz Cheney had to release a recording of the phone call where she conceded. I mean, what is going on here?
Well, I will say this: as far as that phone call goes, I was happy to see Liz Cheney make one and actually concede a race. I mean, I think more politicians need to pay attention to what she did and say, hey, it's over, and make a phone call and concede.
Well, I think they all do that, though. Well, the only person who hasn't done that was the former president.
Well, okay, but
until that was...
I guess what I'm getting at is that may become fashionably trendy now, or trendy, whatever, however you want to say that. I was happy to see Cheney do that, just like, hey, sorry, it's over, boom, let me make a phone call, done. Because you know as well as I do, well, I'll use this for example. Carrie Lake in Arizona. Do you think had she won, do you think she would have easily conceded that race? I don't think so. I think she'd still be trucking around Arizona.
Yeah, but again, this is all a precedent set by the former president.
Oh, I'm not arguing with you. But my point, though, is that I'm glad somebody came out and just made that phone call and done with it. Now, you're right. A lot of politicians still do it. And it is the right thing to do, but hey...
But for the voters in Wyoming, are they willing to elect somebody, and I know they are, and they are going to elect Hageman, but why are they electing somebody who's basically, like, day one after winning the primary, just lying? For no other reason than just a lie.
Here's the thing, right? She's going to win.
No, I know. I said that, but I'm saying, but
Here's why.
She just lied. Like, why is she being a liar for no reason?
She's going to... Well, as far as that goes, you're right. She had no real reason to do it. She's got Trump behind her. She's going to win in a state that is overwhelmingly Republican. She's on her way to victory. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all know this, right? You bring up a good point. Why did she have to lie? I don't know. Like I said, I was just happy Liz Cheney made that phone call and didn't drag this thing out. I mean, Phil, did you ever once hear anything come out of Liz Cheney's mouth about elections being rigged in Wyoming?
No, of course not.
Voter fraud?
Because she's not completely unrealistic, conspiracy theory driven bullshit artist. She believes in the truth and she's honest, and that's where she lies. And what's more important about this is, what does that say about the Republican Party? What does that say about the GOP moving forward?
Well, I mean, we're going to talk some about that here a little later in the podcast, but I mean,
yeah, but specifically with the lens that Liz Cheney has been a staunch conservative right? She
Her
is
whole
the
life.
daughter of a staunch conservative. And what does it say about the Republican Party that they are willing to basically remove her from their party in Wyoming and then not allow her to get reelected?
You talk about her being staunch. I'll answer your question in a second. I was going to just say this. So you talk about her being staunchly conservative. I don't have the number in front of me, but I think she voted with Trump 90+% of the time.
It was
more so than many other Republicans.
I think it was 99% of the time, honestly.
It was in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
More so than a lot of other Republicans. And so, yes, she is a conservative Republican. What does it say about the voters in Wyoming? They're all in on Trump.
What does it say about the GOP as a whole? I
Well,
mean, and I'm talking about the GOP voting bloc, but also the GOP politicians. I mean, but the GOP voting bloc. I mean, this is a sign that they are definitely not the party that they used to be.
Well, I think you and I, or you said this the other day when we were talking. You talked about them being kind of a two-tent party right now, right? The Trump tent and then the other tent, right? And we're seeing some. So we're seeing some signs of resistance to Trump. We've seen some of the less MAGA candidates prevail in some elections, or some of the primaries, I should say. The problem is, now, I guess not a problem in Wyoming at all, because Hagman's safe there. But some of these other states that you're seeing these far-right extreme candidates come out there, it's the problem there is you might win a primary, but the general is where it becomes tough, right? Winning a statewide general election. And so that's where they're going to start to see problems. They talked about some of the blue states, for example, Massachusetts, Connecticut, some of these states where they're seeing like some ultra, hardcore right wing, etc., people winning primaries, and it's like, you're in a very blue state. Good luck putting somebody out there far, far right, because they're going to get slaughtered, right? Mm-hmm. We've seen this though in some of your states like Massachusetts and Maryland. Moderate Republicans have had some luck there, but putting these far right candidates out there. And I should say this. It's one thing if you want to be hard right on some things, but what's hurting them are some of the conspiracy things. You and I talked about it earlier.
The lies
has hurt some of these candidates, right? And so what I see with the future with Liz Cheney, some people have said she just needs to burn down the Republican Party and build it back up from the ground up, right?
I think there was an article that I read that had that title.
Yeah.
That was the title of it. Is that
something that effect?
Liz Cheney is going to burn down the Republican Party and rebuild it
to save it, right? I think was what that article said, right? She's going to go that route to try and save the GOP. And I said this several podcasts ago. I think in one of our first our first episodes, I think I said something to the effect of, I think Liz Cheney is out there trying to be the in her mind, that true conservative, and then she'll be the phoenix rising from the ashes, right? And so I think she sees that. I definitely think she wants to go presidential. We talked a little bit ago, though, about whether she goes Republican or independent. Is there any lane, Phil, for her if she tries to run in a Republican primary, say for the 2024 election? Is there a lane for Liz Cheney going up against Trump? Let's say Trump runs, or if Trump doesn't, let's say Ron DeSantis is the front runner. Is there a lane for Liz Cheney against that? Do you see any kind of lane there?
I do, because I think that what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of people who may have voted Republican in the past but don't anymore, or a lot of people that are kind of disenfranchised by the party. You're going to see a lot of Democrats, just because of the way Liz Cheney has gone about her business with the January 6th committee. I mean, I've said it before, if she ran for president, I would consider voting for her. I mean, now obviously it depends on who she's running against. I know that for a vast majority of our listeners that may kind of side with me on these issues, that may sound like heresy, but depending on the type of campaign, I think that she is shifting very much so for regardless of my political views, there is an arena for the truth, and there is an arena for doing what's right, and there is an arena for standing up for good and democracy and all these things. And so I think there absolutely is a lane. To answer your question, yes.
Okay. So with all that being said, with her, you talk about Democrats. So you think she can successfully pull Democrats in a nationwide election?
Yes, and the reason I say that is because, I had mentioned, you talked about it, but I had mentioned that the Republicans are a two-tent party. The Democrats are a big tent party,
They
right?
are.
There are a
Swings
lot
from
of
Bernie Sanders to Joe Manchin.
absolutely, and there are a lot of differing beliefs, but the more moderate Democrats out there would gladly vote for somebody who is conservative but believes in the truth and stands up for what's right and is pro democracy, as opposed to somebody that they, for whatever reason, they just have a bad taste for, like Kamala Harris or
Or a Bernie Sanders.
or a Bernie Sanders or
So what you're saying is you think folks maybe more in line with a Joe Manchin, Tim Ryan kind of wing of the or of the Democratic Party may see some favoritism or may show favoritism towards Cheney, perhaps.
As much as I want to say no, because you mentioned Joe Manchin, yes.
Well, I think
Because I think most Democrats don't like Joe Manchin at this point.
well,
And it's starting to look like a majority of his constituents aren't happy with him either after this bipartisan bill, or somewhat bipartisan bill.
I disagree with you on that, but we're not talking about Manchin.
True.
We'll
Yeah,
talk about him at
we'll
another
do that.
point.
We'll do
but
that
I want
later.
I want to go back to Cheney here with the presidential run. Is there a lane? Does she bring back some moderates, perhaps? But the thing is, if running in the Republican Party, she would have a steep mountain to climb. I think, and there are some people suggesting this, she may try her hand in that, test the waters, perhaps. May quickly see it doesn't go her way and then jump back in and try and go independent. I think if she ran independent, she would do some real damage. I think she'd pull some, I say real damage, I think she'd do damage against Trump or a Trump-like candidate in a 2024 presidential election, because you know as well as I do, if she runs independent, she's going to pull some Republicans her way. She may pull some independents too. I'm not saying she doesn't. Now, does she win as an independent? No, I'm not trying to say it. But I think at the end of the day, I think Liz Cheney wants revenge. And I think she's upset. And I think she's basically said it. I am here to do whatever I need to do to keep Trump out of the White House. And I think Liz Cheney is sitting there looking at right now, what lane do I need to take to get that accomplished? If it gets me the White House, great. But at the end of the day, my mission is to keep him and his beliefs out of the White House. I will say this, though. Liz Cheney will have no trouble with raising money, I don't think. I mean, she's got a number of wealthy donors that are behind her. I don't think she'll have any trouble getting traction or airtime. I mean, the woman is like a celebrity. She's all over TV and such.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the whole thing, is that she basically is a celebrity now.
So
She's not going to have any trouble raising money. And she's also, isn't she like about to be on the board for Raytheon, which is a huge defense contractor too. I mean, she's following in the footsteps of her father.
I heard an interesting thing, Phil, where some strategist had made mention of a strategy that Liz Cheney could use for 2024, for example, would be to, in the very near future, announce her candidacy, announce that she's going to run for 2024, and then immediately start using her war chest and her donators' money, etc., to just pummel the airwaves with anti-Trump as much as she can, right? Beat that drum over and over and over again. And by doing it early, maybe start to chisel away some at his stranglehold, if you will, over the GOP. So I've actually heard some people suggest that too, Phil. Do you think she's going to announce something soon? I mean, like officially announce something soon?
Well, I think that the time frame that she has got to announce something is going to be very much based off of what the former president does. So I think that if she is going to announce that she's running for president, she doesn't have to be super specific. She just has to put it out there because of like campaign finance laws and stuff like that. But I think that a majority of that, I mean, because she can announce that she's running, but she doesn't have to announce that she's running as a Republican, as a Democrat, as in a marathon. She just has to say, I'm running, right? And so that is going to be solely driven by what the former president decides to do.
Now, you say that, but I saw something where someone in an interview had asked Liz Cheney about going beyond Trump, for example, other candidates, other possible Republican presidential candidates in 2024, for example. And the question was posed about Ron DeSantis. And Liz Cheney said, I would find it hard to be able to vote for Ron DeSantis. In her mind, he's very Trump-like. So she had made that statement as well. So, I mean, she may even look at this as if Trump doesn't run for whatever reason, but yet DeSantis does. Because I really think DeSantis is there waiting in the wings if Trump doesn't to throw his candidacy out there. But if DeSantis runs, she may be out there to oppose someone like a Ron DeSantis also. Because I think in Liz Cheney's eyes, she feels that not only is Trump someone to remove from the GOP front spotlight, but also those that are very close to him and very similar like in their thoughts. So she may throw herself in the ring too if say DeSantis is out there to try and foil him.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, I could see that, but I think that for the time being right now,
sure,
it's going to be based on. I mean, I think if Trump came out and said, I'm running tomorrow, Liz Cheney's going to be a day or two behind.
I was going to say, an hour later, she's on TV like, here I go. I think I did read something this morning too, Phil, that she started her own group, her own pro-democracy kind of anti-Trump group. And I don't remember the name of it, but she has basically kind of started her own project, if you will, almost like the Lincoln Project did a few years ago. Mm-hmm. She's got something similar that she's announced that she's got going, and I don't know a lot about it, so I don't want to, spend a lot of time talking about it, but I did read this morning she's got something like that going. I don't know if you'd seen anything about that yet.
I haven't, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean,
yeah.
At this point, just about everybody has, so...
Well, and what's interesting about Wyoming too is the woman that beat her. And by the way, the woman that beat her the other night, Harriet Hagman. I mean, she beat her 66.3% of the vote to 28.9. I mean, it wasn't even close at all, right? I mean, she garnered over 113,000 votes to Cheney's little 49,300 and some votes, right? So it wasn't even close at all. But Hagman, in 2016, she was very much against Donald Trump winning the nomination for the Republican Party. She was all behind Ted Cruz. She was very much an anti-Trump person. Now, in later years, especially with her, throwing her name into Wyoming politics and trying to get a lane here to beat Cheney, people would ask her about that very thing, and she said something to the effect of she was misguided and just made a mistake.
Yeah, she was misguided, just like Cruz, Rubio, McConnell, Graham, all these other people. I mean,
well, yeah. So
we could literally it would take us the rest of the podcast to go through the list of people who weren't behind Trump from the GOP.
Well, so yeah, it is interesting though how Hagman had quickly and sharply changed her views because she was pretty staunchly against him in 2016.
I don't think that's interesting at all. Like I said, look at Lindsey Graham.
Well, I mean, you said it. We could do this with different candidates, but
yeah, it doesn't surprise me anymore. I mean, maybe I would have been surprised that that Ted Cruz is still supporting Trump after he called his wife ugly and said his dad shot JFK, but it doesn't surprise me anymore.
Well, so again, if nothing else for our listeners, though, I did want to point that out that Hagman has done quite a shift in her views, but in true political fashion, she saw that as being the thing she needed to do to get a victory, and she sure did. I mean, having Trump's endorsement, that mattered to Wyoming voters. Wyoming voters, I listened to some interviews with them through the week leading up to the election. They were not happy at all with Cheney.
Yeah. Okay.
But there was other primaries on Tuesday night. So
yeah. So let's talk about. I think you want to talk about Alaska.
Yeah, there was, and so I think this one was a little quieter, right? With all eyes being on Wyoming. But yeah, Alaska had their primaries as well. Big news coming out of there is Lisa Murkowski's going to advance. The moderate Republican senator from
the
Alaska.
Kristen Sinema of the GOP.
Oh, shit. So she's going to advance, but this is what's kind of neat about Alaska, I thought anyways. This is the first year of ranked choice voting, and I don't know if you've heard much about that at all, Phil, how they do this.
Only from you.
Yeah, so the way this is going to work with it is they've essentially scrapped their party primaries, and all the candidates that are running for an office, be it the Senate or whatever, they throw them in a pool basically, and you as a voter can walk in there and vote for whoever you would like, and the top 4 advance to the actual election in November. And so, yeah, they got rid of the party primaries up there. It doesn't matter what party you are; the top 4. And so this saw Murkowski advance. She was actually the top vote getter in their Senate primary. So Lisa Murkowski picked up 44.2% of the vote, and a Trump-backed candidate, Kelly Shibaka, I think I got that name correct, picked up 39.8% of the vote. And so with that, Murkowski, you said it. Murkowski's she really kind of is a wild card vote, I guess, with the Republicans. I mean, you'll hear that when they're looking at voting on bills and such, and well, the Republicans are all in except we don't know where Murkowski. And then the other one I think would be Susan Collins, wouldn't you say, Phil?
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. That's the example of what we say, like fiscally conservative, socially liberal.
I think that's probably fits Lisa Murkowski pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's not into ruling on these social issues or ruling right on these social issues.
Lisa Murkowski's she's a pro-choice Republican.
Absolutely,
and she said that before.
Well, and she was one of the big voices that came out after the Roe decision and said we were lied to.
Her and Susan Collins, yes.
Yeah, and so I think that's she certainly holds that place.
Trump hates her though. And he was going out again. I'm just saying,
True.
So in Alaska politics, he was going against her.
Yes, and he may weigh in, but without too much more on that, it should be noted, too, that another person who will be headed to the election for a congressional seat is Sarah Palin.
Yeah, so in Alaska, Sarah Palin, former Governor Palin, or I shouldn't say former Governor Palin, she had her name in for the House race up there, and so that is set now. Looks like she is going to advance along with a Democrat, Mary Peltola, and another Republican, Nick Begich. I hope I said that name right.
Yeah.
He didn't get a lot of the vote. Anyway, that one, they're still trying to sort out who the 4th vote is. I think voting in Alaska is kind of challenging because there are sections of the state that are so darn remote. I've actually heard Lisa Murkowski talk about that before, the challenges of running elections in Alaska. It does take them a while to count things because, as I said a minute ago, it is so darn remote, and they've got villages that are way, way out there. So trying to gather up all the votes can be tough. Funny, with that being said, I've never heard Lisa Murkowski come out and say that Alaska voting is rife with fraud and all that stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest. A lot of voting in Alaska has to be done literally with an airplane.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And so it takes a while to. I was just making a little witty remark there about how if there was a state out there that could probably claim voter fraud, it would probably be Alaska when they're literally flying ballots all over the state and such. But because of that, Phil, you just mentioned the kind of the challenges to running an election up there. They don't yet have the 4th person solidified who's going to run the House.
But either way, the big news is
Palin, who's probably going to take the seat. Now, those House folks also competed in a special election that day to replace Representative Don Young, who died this past March. They don't yet know who is going to pick up that. And so whoever wins that special election, the way I understand it, they will just finish out Mr. Young's term, and then the new one next January will begin anew with a new.
Yeah, so whoever they figure out is going to have 50-something days in Congress, probably.
Probably not much.
Yeah.
And then come January, like I said, they will begin the new term.
Yeah.
There.
So does Palin win the congressional seat?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, we don't even know these other names,
and that's good. I mean, we have somebody we have somebody else in Congress that can fight for airtime with Marjorie Three Names and Lauren Boebert.
Well,
which is effectively what she's going to be. She's going to be a useless.
Well,
but
I mean, I would let's be fair. Let's let her get in there and see what she does. I mean, she's certainly got some political experience. I mean, she was a governor. She's was on the vice presidential ticket with John McCain. So I think it's fair to let her get in. I mean, first of all, we don't know that she gets in, although all odds are that she will. But yeah, I think to be fair, let's see what she does in there. So Yeah, I mean, it's interesting though that she surfaces, and honestly, I have not heard a whole lot about her this fall or this summer. Have you?
No, I mean, and she's also been pretty quiet after the blunder of talking about what real Americans are dealing with from her mansion in Alaska. I mean, that was a pretty bad kind of media, just being in the public eye and not looking good on television. She screwed that all up. So she has been a little bit quiet, but I think that has, if nothing else, been an advantage to her. I think that the quieter she stays, the better off she is from staying away from the groups of Boberts and Greens and those type of politicians.
Well, she certainly does have name recognition behind her, and she'll be tough to beat going forward. Let me ask you this, Phil, though. Do you think Murkowski wins her seat back up there this fall?
I do. Yeah, I think Murkowski's going to win it, and I think a lot of that is because it's a state. Again, it's very. It's not densely populated, right? It's much like we were talking about Wyoming,
Sure,
right? It's very
sure.
spread out. There's a majority of the people that reside in Alaska aren't registered to vote, and a majority of the registered voters don't vote. So I just think that because of name recognition and because she is the one that's talking day to day about what's going on in the state and what's going on in the country in the state, she's going to get it. So
Okay.
I think name recognition pushes her over. Now, I will say that we got to talk about some upcoming races because we've got some juicy ones.
Sure.
One's even going on today.
Yeah.
But before we get started with these races, because this has to be mentioned in the conversation, is did you hear the clip of Mitch McConnell this week talking about not holding the Senate and not winning the Senate?
I did.
All right. So let's go ahead and play the clip.
I think there's probably a greater likelihood the House flips than the Senate. Candidate quality has a lot to do with the outcome.
And that says a lot. I mean, what are your thoughts, Cam?
Well, yeah, no. I mean, there's no doubt it says a lot. I mean, we've talked about this before. Mitch McConnell's he's frustrated, right? I mean, he's frustrated. Look, Phil, I've said this before, right? And I'll say it again. This should be the Republicans' year. I mean, and I really think 6 months ago, going back into last winter, McConnell thought he was going to, they were going to dominate in the Senate, right? And
they honestly should have.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is their year, right? Or this should be a big year for him, and he's frustrated, right? He is frustrated right now.
When he talks about the choice of candidates, he is almost specifically referring to Mastriano and Oz and Herschel Walker,
Masters.
Right? Masters, yeah. I mean, he is talking about these guys.
Yeah, no, he is. I mean, He's talking about the weak candidates, and I mean, he's trying to hold himself together in these press conferences, I'm sure. But I personally think deep down inside, the guy's probably pretty angry. I mean, because he's seen candidates that could probably win that have been pushed aside for these more controversial candidates. And so when he talks about weak candidates, I think that is a lot. There's just a lot of pent-up frustration with him. I've heard also the GOP is pulling a lot of their funding from Pennsylvania. They've essentially kind of given up on that. What it sounds like is one race they are going all in on right now is Ohio. I know there's a tight race there, and we've talked about it on the podcast before between Tim Ryan and J.D. Vance. But I think McConnell and several other Republicans think that Vance can take Ryan there. But
it's not looking good. I mean,
well, but I think that one's neck and neck. I think it's pretty close.
The polls tightened there and got a little bit closer, but they've kind of held over the past week. So we'll certainly see.
We'll see, but but it is interesting that it looks like, or what I'm hearing is that the GOP is almost given up on Pennsylvania, almost ready to say, Oz, you're on your own there. What I do want to say, though, about
who we're going to talk more about in a minute.
we'll get to him in a little bit here. But another thing, though, that McConnell is frustrated about, I was happy he said it. He came out this week and he criticized those that are attacking law enforcement and said, it needs to stop, right? And said, hey, to members of his party, to everybody, stop attacking the FBI. I don't remember his exact words he used. I'm obviously just kind of, surmising, paraphrasing, whatever off what I read, but yeah, I think he's frustrated with that too. I mean, this talk of Paul Gosar was talking about completely getting rid of the FBI or something. Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying some stuff about it.
But before we get too much into that, because we're going to talk about that later too. But do you want to go into Indiana and a couple other states before we veer onto the FBI?
I do. I was just kind of making the point though in general about that. So I will get to Indiana in a second. I just wanted to wrap up though with McConnell. I was glad that he came out and said that. Phil, we also saw Mike Pence saying something similar, did we not, this week?
Yeah, but again, I mean, I don't give any glory to that. Like, you're not a hero because you stand up for what's right.
I knew you were going to say that, but I do give them that, and I'm glad to hear they're saying that, and I am hoping that they can tamp down some of the rhetoric. Do you think? Now, I will ask you this though: do you think people like Mitch McConnell or Mike Pence saying, "Hey, stop that"? Does that help at all?
No.
You don't think that helps?
No,
you
I don't
think
think
any
that helps.
GOP
I think
folks in the Senate and such will listen to that?
No, I think all those people that are completely unreasonable and again, like, have these crazy points and are part of the alt-right potentially, or the Christian nationalists, that are coming out and saying defund this and that violence is the way, for the future. No, I don't think that's going to hold any water with them. I don't think they're going to change at all. I don't think that affects anything.
Well,
I don't think most people in the country, especially if you believe in that side, give a fuck what Mitch McConnell says.
So I think it does matter some. I think it does to mainstream Republicans. I think there are some that will certainly listen to, if not Mitch McConnell, Mike Pence. I think Mike Pence holds some sway still over the Republican Party.
Mike Pence is the guy they were trying to hang.
Well, again, you talked about the 2/10 of the Republican Party. You are correct. There are certain
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the people in that particular tent don't care what Pence or McConnell or anybody else says.
But I think people in the other tent do.
Yeah, but the people in the other tent aren't the ones out there trying to, like, break into FBI buildings with a nail gun.
So, okay, so with that discussion there, I think at the end of the day, we both do agree, though, that McConnell is frustrated. And I think, the clip we have, et cetera, just shows it. So we'll see how that, kind of plays out as we go forward. But I do want to talk a little bit about Indiana's 2nd congressional seat. A little homework for me last week when we talked about what goes on with Jackie Walorski passing away, how her seat is going to be handled. So actually today, August 20th, there's a primary and an election going on in Indiana for that seat, and they're going to pick the replacement. They're going to select the nominee from November, and candidates that are running in this are former Indiana Attorney General Curtis Hill, who has some real baggage behind him, by the way, Christy Stoltzman, Kurt Nisley, Tiernan Kane, and then Rudy Yakum, who actually worked with Walorski. Now, Walorski's husband is endorsing this Yakum, and so I think probably the favorite to pick it up. Whoever wins it will finish out the term, and going into the end of the year, and then they'll have their general here this fall to see who's actually going to win. So we'll see who picks up with that. I did mention Curtis Hill has some scandals in his past, some sexual misconduct while he was allegations of. He was never charged with a crime, but there were several allegations of sexual misconduct with him while he was the Indiana Attorney General. Nevertheless, he was not charged with anything formally, and he has decided to throw his name in there as somebody trying to pick up that congressional seat, Phil. So we will see how that plays out today.
Great, yeah.
Going into some other races. Phil, did you happen to notice the polling coming out of Wisconsin? I mean, as soon as those primaries ended, pretty much Barnes and there's already polling showing Barnes is actually kind of surging ahead there. Did you see that?
Yeah, Barnes is doing an incredible job, and we talked about it last week. He's running a real grassroots, on the ground campaign, and I think I saw a poll with him. Up 5, I believe. I can't remember exactly.
Well, a Fox News poll is him up 4, and then the Marquette University poll, which is kind of the gold standard for Wisconsin voting, it tends to be pretty accurate there. That one has him up by 7. So he's hit the ground running, coming out of his primary victory there. Again, we'll keep an eye on that Wisconsin one. I want to go out west though on some Senate races and look at the Colorado Senate race. Have you seen this one, Phil?
I have, and it's really interesting. I know we've talked about this guy O'Day before, but this is a really kind of interesting race where you've got a non-Trump Republican squaring off against an incumbent.
Yeah. So Michael Bennet, the incumbent senator out there, Democrat, is indeed squaring off against Joe O'Day. And you mentioned a little bit about O'Day. He's very adamant. He just says, hey, Trump lost 2020, get over it and move on. He is a pro-choice Republican, and he stands by that. And people have attacked him a little bit for that, and he's like, hey, I told you how I stand with that. And he's like, I'm not changing. And he's also said this, get away from the social issues.
Yeah.
O'Day is running, and his background, I was going to say, he's running on fiscal issues. His background is he started a construction company years ago in his basement and has built this company up from nothing to really something out there in Colorado. He's and so he's making a name for himself.
And it should be said too, and this will be my main commentary on this is that I know more about O'Day than I do about Bennett. Because Bennett is relatively a nobody in the Senate, right? He's not somebody that you ever see in front of the camera. He's not somebody that, we don't, I don't know what his voting record is on stuff. And we just don't know much about Bennett. He's kind of one of those Congress people that just doesn't make a name for themselves.
I think he's kind of vanilla in the Senate. I think he votes largely along with the party lines with the Democrats, but there has been some frustration with voters in Colorado with Bennett, expressing that they think he could be doing more. So there is some disappointment there. It's interesting, the Cook Political Report actually took this race and moved it from likely Democrat to leaning Democrat. And they're doing this because O'Day is climbing in the polls. The latest poll I saw on this had Bennett 48%, O'Day at 40%.
Which is still a pretty big hill to climb, especially in 80-something days. I'm
not saying it isn't, but he has moved up by as much as 5% since June. So he has been climbing. I will give him that. He has been climbing. I think the more he gets out there and gets his message out, I think the better for Joe O'Day. And look, Phil, I'm going to be honest with you. A guy like Joe O'Day excites me. Right? You mentioned Murkowski a little bit ago as that kind of fiscally conservative, socially liberal type person. Look, that's what you're getting with Joe O'Day. He's about the issues, but he's not about the nonsense. He's not interested, like I said earlier, in getting down in the trenches on these social issues. He wants to get back to what the Republican Party was years ago, and I'm excited by the guy. Is he going to win in Colorado? I don't think so. I'm not going to sit here today and say he's going to win.
That was going to be my question, is do you think he wins?
No.
I don't think he does either, especially with what we're seeing as 8 points to climb in 80-something days is a lot. Now, with that being said, too, that Cook report, their margin of error was 4.4%.
It is.
Pretty high margin of error. I mentioned that before we started. But I think he's going to hold some water, and I think he is going to garnish a lot of votes.
Do you understand why someone like me is excited by a guy like that?
I do, yeah. No, I totally understand. I think that, again, more moderate, we need more of that, but also this is one of those things who, if he gets elected, who knows what we actually see when he gets into the Senate. You know what I mean?
Well, that's true, but I think, in this point in time, you go off what he's out there saying. He's not a long-term politician. To be fair, let's see if he gets in there. I personally want to see more people like him. Mm-hmm. And let me ask you this, Phil. If he has some success, maybe he doesn't win, but gets some traction in the media and starts to get his name out there, do we see in the future some more Joe O'Day type candidates come out in some of these more blue and purple type states?
I think we do, but I also think that this is not, if he loses this race, this is not going to be the last we see of him.
I don't think so either. No, I don't think so either. So for our listeners, though, keep an eye on that Senate race. Like I said, I'm impressed with what I'm seeing in Joe O'Day. I do think Michael Bennet, the incumbent, wins, but I think it'll be a close race, and I agree with Phil. I don't think we have heard the last of Mr. O'Day should he get beat. this November.
All right, so time for the big moment from Colorado to crudité. Cam, what are your thoughts on the? I know we brought him up earlier, but the when Mitch McConnell refers to bad candidates, the Dr. Oz crudité kerfuffle.
Okay. So for our listeners, if you haven't heard the clip, Phil, do you want to just play the clip
we'll
for
play,
our listeners?
Play the clip.
Thought I'd do some grocery shopping. I'm at Wegner's, and my wife wants some vegetables for crudité, right? So here's a broccoli. That's $2. Not a ton of broccoli there. Here's some asparagus. That's $4. Yep. And carrots. That's $4 more. That's $10 of vegetables there. And then we need some guacamole. That's $4 more. And she loves salsa. Yeah, salsa there. $6. Must be a shortage of salsa. Guys, that's $20 for crudité, and this doesn't include the tequila. I mean, that's outrageous.
So, first reactions. I mean,
okay.
Does this sound? This sounds to me like somebody who doesn't know how to shop for groceries.
Do you really think Dr. Oz shops for groceries?
No, and this is hilarious on multiple different levels. I mean, I know a lot of people have been talking about this week, but the biggest thing is
he can't even get the store right.
Yeah, he doesn't get the store right. You know, I've heard some commentary on the fact that this is not those grocery store chains are basically like New York, New Jersey suburb grocery store. They don't represent most of Pennsylvania. There's all kinds of problems with this thing.
Well, so
the dude obviously doesn't know. I mean, how broccoli is priced. I mean, it's just so ridiculous.
He can't get the store straight. I mean, you just said he's standing there fumbling around. He grabs some broccoli. He doesn't understand that's. He talks about it being $2 for this little head of broccoli. No, you're buying it by the pound, not by the head. I mean, for one. So, he's walking around. I mean, he doesn't even look comfortable shopping in the store.
Yeah, he doesn't have like a basket or a cart or anything.
No, he's like cradling it in his
holding onto all this stuff. I mean, this is so ridiculous on so many levels.
And then, by the way, you bring a guy filming you while you're out grocery shopping. Is that how you normally shop for groceries, Phil?
Absolutely, yeah. Every time I have my personal cameraman there.
Yeah.
You know.
So and then I mean, we can keep going with this though. Like he's standing there, he's fumbling around, he's got his arms wrapped around produce. And then he starts grabbing guacamole and salsa to put on these like broccoli spears or what. I mean, what?
Yeah, he
doesn't even know what he's buying.
Yeah. And then just the fact that he keeps saying crudité, which nobody knows what the fuck that is. I mean, it's like, and I love because it gave it gave Fetterman the perfect opportunity to just unmercilessly troll him, with the photo of him holding up the veggie tray, that. So,
I mean, this just goes to, right, I mean, going in yet again, right, with disappointing candidates. Phil, I said it earlier, right, the whisperings are the GOP's ready to just pull purse strings from this guy. Yeah. And just kind of let him flounder.
He's an awful candidate. I mean, it was like everything that they do, too, is his campaign is a blunder. Everything his campaign does is a blunder. I mean, it was like the whole thing about Fetterman coming out and saying the guy owns 10 homes, and he's like, his campaign comes out and puts on like Twitter, like, oh no, it actually is just 2 homes and 10 properties. It's like he just does not relate to the voters in Pennsylvania, no matter how you strike it. I mean, and John Fetterman, good on him, has taken every opportunity to 1, be like a normal person, 2, to unmercilessly troll him and embarrass him in the public spotlight. It just gets worse and worse for this guy every day.
Well, now I'll say this, right? Oz is showing us what a weak candidate will do in Pennsylvania as Fetterman has stayed ahead of him, basically. He's not really pulling it. He stayed ahead of him. David McCormick, though, had he won this race, we'd have, I say race, right? Had he beat Oz in the primaries, there'd be quite a race going on in Pennsylvania right now.
I agree. But this just shows you what, Trump can wield all this power, and his camp can kind of wield all this power in the primaries. But does that translate to the actual election? And I think it should go without saying that based on McConnell's comments and based on all this stuff, the answer is no.
Yeah, well, I will say depends on the state, right? I mean, if you're in a very red state, i.e. Wyoming, right, it can, maybe doesn't really matter, or it helps you getting the Trump endorsement. you're right. In the primaries, it might help you when you have an energized small base that's coming out voting in these primaries. But in a state like Pennsylvania, or and some of these other ones that we've been talking about, Arizona and such, they're floundering, and that's again where McConnell's frustration comes into play on that. Fetterman has taken a little heat too about his money, and he comes off as this ordinary Joe, but. There have been some reports saying that he's been basically gifted money from his father up until he was, in his 40s, right? Getting $50,000, $60,000 checks from his father to live too. So some are pushing back saying, well, Fetterman, you're not exactly your everyday Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but
either.
Come on. $50,000, $60,000 checks is not like Dr. Oz. Like, his net worth is like $100 million. I mean, the guy...
I think it... The one thing, though, to bring up is Fetterman didn't exactly
The guy calls
grow
vegetables crudité.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that, but I think it is worth pointing out that Mr. Fetterman didn't exactly grow up in the toughest of times.
You can point that out all the way to November. Fetterman is going to kick this guy's ass, and it just, the point being is that everything that Oz does is a complete blunder.
I don't disagree with you. Fetterman's going to win this one. The crudité thing, though, was, I think people from both sides of the aisle are laughing at this. I have heard people laughing at it on almost every news network out there about this crudité video. So,
with that being said, we got to briefly talk about the Trump CFO, Weisselman, right? 15 counts, 15 felony counts of tax fraud. The guy is going to spend time in jail. And the biggest development in this is that along with this, there was some immunity provided for some other stuff. But he is now going to be forced to testify and not plead the fifth, but fully testify in some of these other investigations into the Trump organization.
So, just for our listeners, what this is essentially about... Mr. Weisselberg, he took off the book payments from the Trump organization without paying any kind of taxes. And so quite a lot of money were some of these off-the-record payments to him, and now it's catching up to him. You said it, he's got to testify now. The Trump organization came out with a statement accusing the Manhattan prosecutors of putting pressure on Weisselberg. But the deal... The way I've read it does not require him to testify against Trump directly.
No, just against the organization.
Just against the organization, yeah. Yep. But he is gonna. So here's one. He is gonna have to pay nearly $2 million in New York state and city taxes.
Yes, and like I said, he was the chief financial officer of the Trump organization, right? So that should be the headline right there. Is that Trump organization chief financial officer pleads guilty on 15 felony counts of tax evasion.
Yeah, and we'll see how this plays out here as we go forward. Speaking of taxes, there's been a lot of churn about the IRS here in the last couple of weeks, certainly. So the Republicans have been holding on to this 87,000 new hires will be coming forward from the bill of the Inflation Reduction Act,
which is fake news, right? Of course, and you don't expect much other than fake news. But it's not by this. Okay, so hold on. This Inflation Reduction Act is not hiring 87,000 new guys with guns that are storming into houses to shoot tax-paying Americans.
So let's break that down. So this 87,000 new agents, whatever, new hires, right?
Yeah, but this is all of the department. This is not just the IRS. This is the entire Treasury Department. And it's not even mentioned in that bill. It's just 87,000 over the next 5 years.
So a good
for
share,
people that are retiring
So let me say this. A good share are to the IRS, but you just said it. These are hires. The IRS is breaking this thing down, right? A bunch of this number of new folks or hires, et cetera, are to replace people that have retired or are retiring in the next 2 years. There's some IT agents that they're hiring, secretaries, probably janitors for that matter. I mean, it sounds like it is hires that are going to go across to keep the IRS going. Some of them will be new. The big... the fear here and what people are nervous about is that these new agents, or there's going to be new agents that are going to come out and put pressure on people on middle class.
Door, which is not the case. I mean, And these are honestly, Cam, these are unhinged threats from the right wing that are dangerous.
Well, so Rick Scott, Florida senator, he came out and said, told people don't bother applying for those jobs. We take control of the Senate and the White House. We're defunding all of this. So that was Florida Senator Rick Scott. Chuck Grassley, Iowa senator, has made some comments. Senator Grassley had talked about, something to the effect of, what does this mean? Are we going to now have, armed IRS agents breaking into Iowa people's homes, dragging them out to pay?
The answer to that is no, and this is just grandstanding by the right to put the fear in Americans, because that's the way that they win is by putting fear into Americans.
So what Grassley, now I will say this, Grassley, it looked like his words got a little bit twisted, because some people were saying, well, Chuck Grassley was out there saying this means, 87,000 new agents are going to storm America with AR-15s. That isn't exactly what he said. He simply just said, well, what does this all mean? Kind of asked a question.
But others have said that.
Well, so there have been some that have said it. There have been some Republicans, too, though, that have said, hey, tone down the rhetoric, right? We talked earlier about Mitch McConnell, but there have been some other ones, too, that have said, hey, tone the rhetoric down. I found it interesting. Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia, he put out something on Facebook the other day that essentially said, hey, calm down. There are not going to be armed agents coming, to kick in the doors of middle-class Americans and small business owners. He had a whole statement about that on Facebook, and then he put in there, like, if by chance you are getting threatened by the IRS, call my office. So Senator Manchin is trying to tone it down some, trying to calm some people down with the IRS things. But again, we'll see kind of how this plays out. I think you're seeing. I think this will cool itself down a little bit, but you said it right. When we start talking about and we bring up, people that are just displaying, anger and trying to rile up people against government agencies, be it the FBI or the IRS, that can lead to, to people becoming unhinged, if you will, right? And it could lead to death, possibly. People's safety is on the line. So,
and at the end of the day, right? Like I don't know what kind of middle America like people are living in, but the IRS doesn't typically come after normal law-abiding people, right? So for some of the Republicans to be saying, "Oh, we're going to defund this," look, this is just enhancing efforts for the IRS to enforce the rich and big business to pay their fair share of taxes.
I'll push back a little bit on that. I think in theory this will go to as you said it, make sure that the big businesses are paying their share. But there are actually a lot of middle and lower class Americans that do get audited every year. I mean, a good share of those audited make less than $100,000. So I mean,
yes, true. However, right? Again, I've been audited. You've probably been audited at some point. I get it. But you know what happened when I was audited? Nothing. I got audited, and guess what? I had paid my fair share of taxes. I didn't owe anything else. I just got audited. Was it painful? Yes. But do we want that more to be in effect for people that are dodging their taxes? Yes, I do.
Well,
and I think that the IRS fairly enforcing and getting the tax dollars that the U.S. government is owed is important.
So whether it be with the IRS or the FBI, because both agencies have taken heat as of late, we talked about some of the rhetoric. Now, I found it interesting that Representative Dan Crenshaw of Texas actually said this week, I find it impressive that the Democrats have actually now got us to say to defund the FBI.
Yeah. And this is a great talking point because
But to go on, let me just finish what Representative Crenshaw said. He said this when candidates or when politicians say this shows us to be unserious. Those are that was the word he used, was unserious. And Crenshaw basically said knock it off, more or less. Mm-hmm. So But I mean, again, looking at Representative Crenshaw and his background, the man was a Navy SEAL. He's, fought for truth, etc. So
Yeah.
I think someone like him just gets frustrated when he sees this, don't you think, Phil?
I do, but I also think it's part of the funnier portion of the story is that the Republicans all of a sudden are adopting the word defund.
Well, that's exactly what Representative
yeah.
Crenshaw said. That's what he was getting at. He's like, stop, look. He basically said, look, we were all over the Democrats for defunding the police, which, by the way, that blew up big time in their face. And Crenshaw said it, and he's like, and now we're saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking about defunding law enforcement agencies. I mean,
Yeah.
he's frustrated, right? And so, there have been some on the right. Certainly the vocal ones, especially Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about defunding the FBI.
Which she's an idiot, and the
As-
fact that her and Dan Crenshaw are arguing in the first place about this is like
They have been arguing.
Yeah, but I'm saying the fact that they're arguing about it in the first place is disappointing for Americans, right? I mean, Dan Crenshaw is like a five
tour.
We said 5-tour Navy
Yes.
SEAL combat veteran. He's got several awards with a V for valor, which means
Yeah, I was
you
gonna
are
say-
no shit a badass.
I think he's got a Bronze Star with Valor.
Yeah, he does. He has a Bronze Star with valor. So
Lost his eye to an IED in 2012, I think.
yeah, so whatever ground good old Marge thinks she has to stand on to fight with this guy, I mean, I got nothing else to say about it. I mean, I just can't go any further. It's so ridiculous.
Well, and I
like
mean,
the failed CrossFit gym owner, shitting on a fucking war hero.
But again, and going back to my point with Crenshaw and with McConnell, there are Republicans that are fed up with this and that are saying things. So I think as we look forward, we'll see where this IRS stuff, we'll see where this rhetoric takes us, and some of it is getting churned up as we head into the midterms. But these are certainly issues to keep an eye on as we go forward. Phil, do you want to put a plug in quick for our new website that we got out there?
Absolutely. So, the places where you can see us and get content is increasing. Pocketpolitics.co is our website. So you can go there. There's links to our Spotify. Again, you can get our podcast on all major platforms where podcasts are heard. And it looks like we're making moves on Facebook and Instagram as well, so we'll get that out to you in future episodes.
Yeah.
But with that being said, engage with us. We want to hear the feedback. There's our email address is up on the website and everything, so pocketpolitics.co.
And I will say again, too, if there's something you want us to talk about, please send it to us in an email. Let us know. We'll read these emails. We'll look for it. You want us to talk about a race or some political issue, we'll dive into it.
Yep, or if you're, not super old like Cam and I are, you can always reach out to us on social media on our Facebook page.
There's that, too.
Link is on the website.
Yeah, it's all out there, but looks like we are about out of time again this week, so I want to turn it over to you for your parting shot, Phil.
Yeah, so Cam, have you heard anything? They've been talking about this a lot in the past 10 days or so, but have you heard about quiet quitting?
A little bit.
Yeah, so quiet quitting, I guess, is this trend where, me, I'm a geek on the labor movement, and I love hearing things about this, but it's this trend where people don't actually quit. They just refuse to put in any extra effort in their jobs without fair compensation. And so they're not going to maybe answer their phone after working hours, or they're not going to go above and beyond to do stuff that their bosses and employers want them to do. They're just basically saying, I'm here to do this job. And, I've seen a lot of stuff that says this doesn't really affect labor productivity that much. And so the numbers on that aren't really going anywhere. But this is just another incentive for, I think, employers to start paying their fair share and start compensating people the way they're supposed to be compensated. Because, a lot of Americans may not identify, like if you ask Americans who they are probably not going to tell you, oh, I am a worker, right? And that should be known. But yet we spend 40, 60, some people even 70 years of their life just working. And I think people are starting to get fed up, Cam.
Okay, well, that'll turn it over to me now, I guess, for my parting shot. So I just want to say this: here we are in late August, and baseball races are heating up as we move towards the end of the season here. And so I just wanted to give a little shot here to the Minnesota Twins from my home state, and I'm certainly a Twins fan. They are battling the Cleveland Guardians in the AL Central. They're only one game back. They've actually been ahead for quite a lot of the season. They've had some stumbles here as of late, and so the Guardians are up a game on them right now. But here, as we move into September, the Twins and Guardians have a couple big series that I and every Twins fan and Guardians fan, for that matter, are going to be keeping an eye on them. So I just want to put it out there. Let's go, Minnesota Twins. I'd love to see you finish strong there and take the AL Central. Now, if you do take the AL Central, there is some big challenges that lay ahead of you, because you got teams like the Yankees and such out there, and Astros in the American League. And I'm going to be honest, the Twins haven't fared very well at all against the New York Yankees over the last 20 years or so. But hey, go Twins, overtake those Guardians, and let's see you win the AL Central. And that's my parting shot for the week, Phil.
Nice, Cam. I think just by you repping the Twins, I think you're going to make some of the listeners in my family, I've got some people in my family from Minnesota, and then also my mom was always a big Twins fan, so I think you're gonna make them happy.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, at the end of the day, good luck to the Twins, and we'll wrap it up and catch up with you a week from now. So that's all we have for this week. Thanks, Cam. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll see everybody back next week.
All right, until next time.
Bye.